So I'm just sitting here trying to get the worst rust out of this thing I've ever had to deal with.
Blah 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 like.
In the event you're unfamiliar, if you want to do this, water, sodium carbonate. The sacrificial steel has to be clean, so you got to take them out once in a while because you're transferring the rust from here to here. So in this case I have 1, 2, 3, 4 of them. They are bonded together. You do have to keep all these connections clean. The sacrificial steel is your cathode and your part is your anode. If you mix that up, you will transfer the rust from the rods onto your part. And all you really need is a battery charger. If you look, you'll probably see a little spark. And that's because the booster will make this a conductive solution. And that's really its only purpose there. It's a self-limiting process. It won't attack the metal. It'll only attack the rust. So it's going to transfer the ferric oxide from your piece over to your cathodes. I'm just using a regular battery charger. It pulls about 2 amps. You know, any supply you got that'll give you around 12 volts, 2 amps will be fine. It's not picky. Don't do this on a gas tank unless you research it. Don't do it on anything that's closed, sealed, or anything like that because it does build hydrogen. Best to do it outside. Best not to do it in a tank or anything that can explode. Other than that, it's pretty easy, straightforward. You just leave it in there as long as you can is the best practice. It's slow, but it works. This here is the center post, which we looked at previously. This is the thing we did a little bit of letting down at the end. What I did was I just went through with the red ox and some rattle can and I just primed it. There's a bracket that goes here. You can see I've done some doweling. I went in at a 45 on those. And obviously we're missing, this was all rotted out in here. This has this piece here. This here bolts to a hole in the rocker panel that we just looked at. And so this is kind of buried inside of here. And it sits right around there. This is what I came up with here. I'm going to throw that in there like that. I made that piece of crap for in there. Tuck that in there like that. That in there like that. Yeah, a nut. Jack that up. Fill all that with resin. And force it in there with some dowels. Ain't not ever gonna see that guy. So I got a layer of epoxy on there. And I'm gonna take and put this thing in. I'm gonna tape it off at the end. Oh, that's perfect. Dial that right in there. Here is our pillar, our center pillar after it's been filled with epoxy. I went back and I sanded some of it down just to get it so it's flush, but this is essentially ready for prime and paint. I gotta just clean it up again. I just put a bunch of garbage in there. I pegged it into this original piece of wood. So I cut this piece here out and I'm going to fill it up with some epoxy before I put the splice back in. I was talking with Merle and he suggested heating this up with a heat gun to open up the pores, which I've done. I don't know if I heated it up enough, but I kind of think anything's going to be better than nothing here. don't know if I'm going to make it without it dripping down that hole right there, but we'll find out. If it does, I'll just have to do a second pour. Won't be the end of the world. When you're doing this stuff, it does tend to ooze out of places you didn't know existed, or you couldn't have imagined that the rot extended through, or you know, there's some screw holes or whatever. Give that a file down, and we'll make a piece to go over it, and good enough. There we go. That should do her. Here's this. I had to run it through the planer a bunch to get it to the right thickness, and there's a little bit of a tips in right here. I don't know if that's to get your meat claws in there to pop out the floorboard or what it is, but I just kind of mirrored the other side. You got to anchor it a bunch right here first, and because it's got a little bit of a, this is a little bit of a bend. I don't think you can probably see it on the camera, but there's a little bit of a bend in that. So all I'm going to do is pull that down first and then pull this end up last. And I have thought about like back cutting it in there, but I don't really think I need to do that. And then I've got to come back and drill this out for the bore for the, there's a body mount right there where we made that hole. I'd say if you never worked with ash before, go pick up some, because it's, you know, it shapes nicely. You know, I carved that swoop out by hand. I didn't really even try, and I think you can probably see where it, you know, without much effort, as long as you got a nice sharp chisel or a draw knife, you can get a, you know, it's very workable and it's heavy. So inside here we got our piece in, and just a little bit of paint and prime in there, nothing special. Got the bracket cleaned up, and here is our, here's our piece that we made. That will go something like that. This has to get screwed back in. We're actually low now that this has been replaced, and I've straightened out this bracket. So what that means is this here will probably have to come up. You know, it makes sense because what direction is it going to go besides down? And I think what I'm going to do is I want to put the metal, there's a reinforcement type of a strip that goes on here, a steel thing that bends the corner. It's actually up there. I want to put that back in because that kind of splits the strength, that kind of splits the force between this wood and that piece, and then I want to push it all up together. I've been cleaning it up down in here. I've been cleaning up around where we did the repair on the dog leg, and up in there where I made that patch. It still needs a little bit, but I'm getting pretty close to the point where I'm just gonna say screw it and start shooting down some primer. Up in here, I've gotten all of this. I gotten the rust out of all this here, so this is ready. So what I'm gonna end up doing is I'm gonna prime all this, get some kind of paint on there, and then you start putting the rocker panel back on there, and the center post, and these pieces, and the door, and all that stuff once I get all of this detail primed and sealed, and then the side can start to go back together. One of the things I did do was I shimmed out this bracket right here because the door was heading down here where it closes, and we had a really weird gap, and you can still see this, it's a little bit pitched down this way, but it's a lot better than it was, so I ended up just putting some shims behind that hinge right there. That should be good enough. I don't really think I got to go a lot farther with it, but you know, I just wanted to make it a little bit better than it was, and I'm not going to really worry about perfect, but that's kind of where I'm at the moment. Still a ton of stuff to do here. I got to look into the transmission. I have to look into the rear end. That clutch is probably close to garbage, but you know, I don't know, maybe not. We're working on that piece. Twisted the crap out of this thing, trying to get it out, and now I've had to go back over and over and over and over to get the shape back into it. These are the pieces that go up over the doors. I ran these in the electrolysis and got them all cleaned up. They're ready for prime and paint. So basically we have a whole bunch of parts ready for prime and paint. Been working on the running board a little bit. I got some lead into there, and then I'm just going to fill over that. I think this is the only one out of all of them that's actually been degreased. The rest of this still has to get rubbed down, and it's actually a good amount of work to get all of the stuff off with the prep all. I just use towels, and I keep doing it until they're not dirty anymore, pushing it down to the cracks. And just at some point, when you're kind of sick of doing it, it's probably when it's close enough, but there is definitely one of the more important things you can do. There's a mouse up in my ceiling. You little shit. Oh, I just saw you. I just saw you. Oh, you're gonna die. I put some of those glue traps up, and yeah, a few of them went away, so you know what that means. And there's a roll of paper towels, and there's some wire. All right, we got the back door off. One of the problems I'm having with my little plan here is every time I put a piece of tape on, it pulls the paint off with it. So paint's just junk. The paint is, I mean, that's a surprise, right? All right, doing some final fitment here before I go crazy with the primer. I think everything fits as good as I'm going to be able to make it fit. I got a gap there I'm going to have to fill with some seam sealer. I had to do around the window because this was all rusted out. I just wanted to do that before I put some weather stripping in. But yeah, it was a lot of work to get there. And man, we're not even done yet, but this here was horrible. I mangled this thing so bad when I pulled it off. And yesterday I had to tack on that. I had to make a new end for it, right? Oh, right there. You can definitely see where I had to beat the crap out of it to get it back into shape. It's just not a shape that a piece naturally wants to go in. There's a lot of weird twists and turns to it. I think once I'm good and I nail it in there, I'll be able to tighten that up and then put a touch of sealer on there. All right, on to the next.